This video is brought to you by High Button Sports, Atlantic Canada's leading company in sports entertainment, podcast, mic'd up videos, live streaming, and much more. Make sure to check them out at highbuttonsports.ca. Okay, so why don't we move on to the Habs here? And we were busy, very busy in this offseason. A lot of moves. Again, no shortage of stuff to talk about with the Montreal Canadiens. So they come out of the return to play and this very interesting playoffs, getting a qualifying round victory and then bowing out to the Philadelphia Flyers, who a lot of people said they were going to struggle against because of how hot Philly was coming into that. But honestly, I thought Montreal looked like the better team and Philadelphia had to, rely on a trap system and just getting some lucky goals to knock us out, which is, it works. So why wouldn't you?
Montreal did it.
So, yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, did it for a long time.
Yeah. So, I was pissed off after that series. That's how they won. But when you really take a step back, that's the big one. Montreal did it for so long. So, but then we go on and we had some holes to fill. Marc Bergevin also had his work cut out for him because, Carey Price and Shea Weber are getting up there and we've always been building towards the future. And we're kind of seeing some of that now already in the roster. But we also had to strengthen the team for the present. So why don't I start here with the Jake Allen trade? That was the first move that was made.
I scored a goal on Jake Allen.
Did you?
Swear to God. Bam triple A.
Scored a goal on Jake Allen.
Yeah, he's playing for Frederick and scored a goal on Jake Allen. Not even joking.
Not a big deal.
No, well, I mean...
Maybe a big deal.
It's not a big deal, but that was interesting. That's all God's honest truth.
Yeah. So we get Jake Allen, who Tyler scored a goal on, for a 3rd and 7th round pick, and he has 1 year left on his deal, $4.35 million. I thought this was a great pickup by the Habs. We've needed a backup goaltender for so long, ever since our last good backup was Al Montoya, and then before that, Peter Budaj, and they did a really good job for us. This gives us a solid backup that will allow Price some rest and also give us some points in the standings. Our backups combined, I think 3 of them last year for 3 wins, like 4 wins from our backups last year, and Carey Price had the rest. So I thought this was a great move by Marc Bergevin to go out and get the man that he wanted. And it's not just a backup, it's a goalie who could fill in if there's any. I don't even want to say
he used to be a starter.
Yeah.
And he was a good, good starter for a little bit.
Yeah.
He's almost going to be asked to do the same thing as what he was done last year. So it's almost, he should be comfortable. He knows the role. So I thought it was a great move.
Yeah. And then we move on to Joel Edmondson. 5th round pick. We acquire Joel Edmondson from the Carolina Hurricanes, just his bargaining rights. And then we go on to extend him 4 years, $3.5 million. Now, I do like this move as well. Joel Edmondson is a very sound shutdown defenseman, always puts up quite a few blocks, but he's also got a nice shot with him too. And our left side defense has been a little weak over the last few years. This gives us a defenseman with a lot of experience. Now the contract, he's getting paid the same as Ben Sherratt, so you kind of do see them as comparables. They're similar size, similar role, but we have 2 of them now, so I do like the move, but we'll see how it works out. I think it gives our decor some good depth.
Well, and the defensemen that, if you look at the cap hits, maybe they're not, but they're not guys that can't be moved. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're not, if it comes to the point where you need clear, you're not going to throw a pick or a prospect to move them.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't have
Yeah, that's for sure. And every team is looking for defensemen like this.
You can't have enough.
Yeah, especially now when it's kind of GMs, or at least fans anyway, are realizing, I think some GMs are realizing, that you can't just rely on speed and skill. The game hasn't changed as much as people say it has. You still need those pure shutdown guys.
Go down the list of cup winners. Exactly.
Because there are, the talent in the top 6s of NHLs is insane. You need someone to shut them down, especially in the playoffs. So a lot of teams are looking for guys like Joel Edmondson, Ben Sherratt. Then Jeff Petry, contract extension. I love this extension. I was really worried we'd be losing Jeff Petry soon. He was coming up to unrestricted free agency after next season, but we extend him to a very nice cap hit, $6.25 million for 4 years. So now we've got 5 years left of Jeff Petry. He is 32 years old, but I feel like he's played his best hockey in the last 2 years.
And I mean, his contract would come up at the same time when Weber would pretty much be done. Price would pretty much be probably past it. So yeah, it's not a
Yeah. Now, I guess I can get your thoughts on this one. We did not end up going after Patrick Laine and putting together a big package. Instead, we got we shipped off Max Domi and a third for Josh Anderson. Yeah. So before we get into the Josh Anderson deal,
well, I just never understood the Laine rumors to Montreal to begin with. Just from Winnipeg's perspective, you needed to get, if you're going to trade him, a number 2 center and a top 4 defenseman.
Right.
Who was Montreal giving in return that was going to match that criteria, right? So I never understood that. And not to mention, I don't think I'm not a huge Laine guy. I think he's going to score a lot of goals. That might be about it. Domi for Anderson and a third.
Domi for Anderson and a third.
It's going to come down to if Josh Anderson can stay healthy. Because if not, you kind of just threw away... I wouldn't say threw away Domi because you're going to have to find out. But I thought, personally, Domi, maybe Mete would be packaged, not for Laine, but maybe for something down the road, like a goal scorer or something else. I don't think it was
more of a younger prospect.
Maybe like a better Tyler Toffoli at the time before they just signed Toffoli. Right. Maybe that's what I thought they maybe could have tried to.
Right.
And if you kind of got crazy, I was always bug your brother, big Habs fan, about maybe Kopitar. Trade one of those young guys and some for Kopitar. But I thought Domi would be part of a bigger deal. You know what I'm saying? To get a bigger.
Right.
But I mean,
so because we added, it was Domi and a 3rd round pick that we added for Josh Anderson, and then we do go on to sign Josh Anderson 7 years.
Yeah. $5.5
million. Now, I got to point this out here, and we'll get more into this Josh Anderson trade, but if you look at the contract that Anderson signed, he does have a modified no-trade clause throughout the contract, but for the half of it, it's all it is he can name 8 teams he doesn't want to be traded to. That's for half of it.
Wide open.
Then it goes down, in the last half, he can only name 5 teams. So we signed Anderson to that long-term of a contract, and he barely has a no-trade clause. So maybe if it doesn't happen to work out, it is a trade. It might still be a tradable contract.
And he's one of those guys that just like the physical specimen that people will probably always take a gamble on.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like someone will always be like, okay, that's interesting. Like the guy that big can skate.
Yeah.
Like I said, the shoulder holds up. I think he's a fine fit for Montreal.
Yeah, I love this. I absolutely love the signing. I've talked about it on my channel a bunch already, so people know that I love the signing. I've been an Anderson fan for a long time, like a couple years now. He's one of these old school power forwards that you don't see much of, like Tom Wilson, Wayne Simmons when he was in his prime. Yeah, they're very rare. And we've needed a right winger, a power forward right winger for so long. That's a piece that every Stanley Cup champion tends to have. A big right winger that can score. So to get that in Josh Anderson, who was one of the best before his injury, I loved it. So, I mean, we give up a really high price for him. Domi did have a 70-point season at center.
Yeah.
And I loved having Domi. Like you're a Leafs fan. No, I loved having there's a picture.
World Juniors though. Everybody in Canada loved Domi.
Yeah. Oh
he's just one of those guys. He's likable, and I like Domi. Just for the simple fact, when NHL.com put out who's the best player that ever wore number 13, he said Matt Sundin, not Datsuk. So I don't mind. I have no problem with Max
the picture
at all.
Up there, him and Ty at center ice.
That's
in the
goofy.
Habs gear. I
That's
love it.
Goofy,
just the troll factor, and those pictures will live forever, right? So we got
did all that for his kid to play 2 years in Montreal?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And now he's crawling back to you guys, talking about how nice the moves were that Dubas made. It's hilarious.
The only reason I love Ty is because I think his best friend's Sunday, so I think they're so tight. So that's
So we give up a high price. Domi did have a 70-point season at center, but I don't think there was rumors about us going after Laine and Domi being part of the package, but Winnipeg didn't view Domi as a center.
Yeah.
The Habs didn't clearly see him as a center. Arizona didn't see him as a center. It's kind of like the Galchenyuk situation. Is he going to go to Columbus and be a center now? Or is he just going to end up on the left wing?
I would hope not.
They want him to be. That's what it seems to be like, but will he?
I just feel like at a certain point you just got to say what it is, because all you're doing is just hurting him as a player. Like just chuck him on the wing, let him do his thing.
Yeah. So the way that I'm kind of looking at this trade, if it ends up being Domi on the left wing, and we've got this is all assuming Josh Anderson gets back to form, right?
In full health, yeah.
We trade a left winger who's capable of anywhere between 50 to 70 points, depending on the season, because Domi has consistency issues, for a big power forward right winger. I feel like that's a trade win. Plus the fact that Domi signed for just 2 years in Columbus.
Yeah.
Could walk to free agency. Meanwhile, Josh Anderson could still have 5 years left on his contract, scoring 25 to 30 goals for us.
And I think another thing, too, is I know 5.5 the money, so you'd love to see him produce. Josh Anderson is one of those guys, even if he doesn't score, he can still have an impact.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Domi a lot last year, but he get frustrated, would take a stupid penalty.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing people I kind of underestimate. Even if Josh Anderson doesn't score, 20-something goals and live up to the full 5.5, he should always still have an impact on a hockey game because of his size.
The exact opposite of someone like former Habs captain Max Pacioretty, who is for a long period of time, was one of the best goal scorers in the league.
Yeah.
However, he did have a lot of slumps, and his last season with the Habs wasn't so great. But the thing is when he wasn't scoring, what was he doing? He was really good defensively. I'll give him that. Very strong defensively. But he's a big guy, but he didn't really use his body to forecheck, And I don't want to turn this into shitting on Max Pacioretty, but that's just my point.
Because he had a good
Josh
playoff.
Anderson, he did. He's been great in Vegas.
Yeah.
He really has been great in Vegas. But Josh Anderson just does so much out there, and I'm really excited to see him out there. And he's super fast for a guy his size.
And another thing is with a guy like Josh Anderson, see where the Leafs get Wayne Simmons. Wayne Simmons ain't playing with Marner. He's not playing with Matthews. He's not playing with Nylander.
Yeah.
Josh Anderson could have a top 6 role.
Yeah.
So he's a big boy that's affecting the big line playing. He's going to drag those guys into the battle, right?
Point. Yeah.
So it's not like,
Marner having to face up against Josh Anderson. And I love that. The other thing, too, looking around our division, I have, I think I mentioned it earlier, the Atlantic Division is kind of adjusting to Josh Anderson now being in the division. You guys get Wayne Simmons. You needed your toughness anyway. You guys were looking for that. But we saw...
Ottawa get Goodbranson.
Yeah, Ottawa get Goodbranson. There was another one, too. Was it...
Radko Gudas, Florida.
Radko Gudas for Florida. So
Patrick Hornquist in Florida.
Yeah, so teams are getting bigger. Like the Atlantic Division is going to be tough. We got Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa, so it's going to be a heavy.
And that doesn't mean fighting. That just means going in there and it's going to be hard-nosed hockey. If you don't bring your lunch pail, chances are you ain't coming out with a win.
Yeah, so I think we are going to see a few different fights here. Not nothing crazy. But like to set the tone early, you might see guys like, if you think about it, Josh Anderson is a right winger, Tkachuk's a left, so they're going to be lining up in the face-off dot against each other.
I love Brady Tkachuk as a Leafs fan. I still love the kid so much. And
I really like him too. I just hate that he's on the Sens, man.
I know it's like an Oilers with Matthew Tkachuk. It's like
he's the exact same kind of player like Anderson. I love those type of players. Wilson, Anderson, Tkachuk. Oh, man, I love Lawson Krause establishing himself as a power forward.
That was a big one because I always like Lawson Krause. World Juniors, yes.
So moving on from that, the Montreal Canadiens didn't end up getting Taylor Hall. He went to the Buffalo Sabres. And instead, we signed Tyler Toffoli to a 4-year deal, $4.25 million. And he doesn't have any trade stipulations on this deal either.
Could they have, without the Toffoli, did they have the money for Hall?
They didn't necessarily. There's that,
but they could have moved they
could have moved something.
What's
else.
Paul?
Paul Byron's 3.4, Jordan Wheel's 1.4. But it's interesting you say that because Tyler Toffoli puts us over the cap, so we do have to shed a little bit of salary.
And I think
it might be Wheel.
Yeah, that's the one I seen.
It could be Byron.
I seen Jordan Wheel,
but Byron's $3.4 million for 3 years. So that's,
and you're not gonna.
He is a good player.
You may have chucked in a sweetener for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and he has been an important part of the team, and he does provide a speed aspect, breakaways that teams have to always be looking out for him, especially on the penalty kill.
When your teams get better, some guys get slotted down. That seems to be what happened with him.
Yeah.
But when he was a full-time, top 6 doing his thing, he produced.
Yeah.
So it just
So we don't go after Taylor Hall. What do you think of that?
Well, strictly from a Montreal standpoint, they ain't gonna win a cup this year. Like, you know what I mean? They're not. So why go for Hall for 1 year unless your whole idea was maybe flip him or something? So that you're better off getting Toffoli. You're building towards something with someone like him. You know what I mean? Because I think Montreal's key thing will be 2 or 3 years from now.
Right.
I think this year, maybe next year. I don't know. Maybe you name out your playoff for sure. Playoffs could happen. So I don't think there's no reason to get a guy for 1 year, 2 years. Might as well get a guy built towards something like Tyler Toffoli 4 years.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing about the Montreal Canadiens team, and it's already kind of been like this for a couple years now. But it's a group that's going to stay together and they're going to grow together. A lot of them kind of already have been. But now we've got a couple extra pieces like Anderson and Toffoli who will be around for a while. They're going to be with Drouin for a couple years. They're going to be with Suzuki and Kotkaniemi for a few
And
years.
they got some trade chips.
Yeah.
They got some trade chips.
Yeah, quite a few trade chips actually. Yeah, I like this Tyler Toffoli signing. I agree. I didn't really want to go after Taylor Hall. Just with the potential locker room issues. There's got to be something there. It might be overblown, but he doesn't have much playoff experience. His teams typically don't get into the playoffs.
Well, how that one MVP or after that? It's like, is he really
and he's dipped down a bit. Like Thomas Tatar had a better season than Taylor Hall last year.
I hope it works out for Taylor Hall.
So do I.
I think a lot of people like Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful with guys like that because those are the guys that you sign long term end up getting you fired.
Yeah, throw off your team chemistry. You get
doesn't live up to the contract.
You end up having to ship guys out to make a lot of room for a guy like Taylor Hall.
Exactly, and that guy shipped out ends up being like a McDonough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I like the alternative of going for Tyler Toffoli. Consistent 20 to 25 goal scorer in the NHL. He did have a season with 31, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Carter.
His second last season in LA, he only scored 13, but then he followed it up this season with quite a few goals and got the trade to Vancouver and
played
was
great.
Really good in Vancouver. Vancouver fans are super upset that he's now gone. And Habs fans are psyched about it. So I love this signing. Personally, I think the Habs' depth at forward right now is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
You say we're not going to win a cup this year, and realistically, maybe we won't. But if we get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Yeah. I think we're very hard out of the playoffs, and for many more reasons now than just Carey Price.
I think the whole thing that's going to be the Habs' issue this year will be the center ice position. I think Suzuki's going to be a fine player. Kotkaniemi, I don't know about him yet. I'm not NHL player, of course. Is he going to be a bona fide top 4, top 2 center? I'm not sold on that yet. Danault is the perfect guy for Montreal right now, just in terms of you can move him up and down the roster, no problem. So if those two young guys are playing well, you can move him third line. And he's still going to play a bunch of minutes because he's on the PK and all that stuff. Kotkaniemi's struggling, Suzuki's struggling. Danault's no problem putting him up on the top line. He'll match up against the other. So he's the perfect third line guy, ideally, for Montreal if the other two pay him out. So that's the only reason I say Montreal right now. Because I just think they will have a hard time scoring goals again. Just because the center ice issue. That may be a totally different story 2 years from now. 3 years from now.
Right. So I agree with you to an extent here. Like, I actually am quite objective in terms of the outlook of Suzuki and Kotkaniemi. A lot of fans want to just hand over the number 1 and number 2 center roles to them right now. You can't.
No.
They're 19 and 20 years old. Philip Danault is extremely experienced. He's one of the best in the face-off dot in the league. He's in Selke talks. He's really getting a lot of respect in Selke talks now. I think he's a core piece. We got to lock him up. And I see him being in the Habs top 6 for at least another 2 to 3 years.
That's the thing.
And like I said, if it's a long-term contract and if both Kotkaniemi and Suzuki happen to surpass him, it's a tradable contract. But I think Philip Danault has a lot more potential than what people are giving him credit for. He's just into the prime of his career. You think about it, he's put up multiple seasons around 50 to 55 points.
Yeah.
You add 10 to that, he's essentially Bergeron light. Maybe not a future Hall of Famer. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, it's a leap, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of in Bergeron's best seasons when the team was succeeding, he had around 65 points. Yeah. It's not like he was this crazy offensive player. But he has had some seasons where he scored 70 and close to 80. But see what the point I'm trying to make here?
Yeah, I think Danault at this point probably is what he is. He may...
Like at that plateau, it might be.
Don't get me wrong. He may be able to score 5 extra goals and maybe reach a 20-goal mark at some point. What's the highest he has in a career? Like 14, 16?
13 and 60 some games this season.
Yeah. So he could... But ideally, like, he's the perfect, in my opinion, the perfect third-line center for a cup-winning team. Like, perfect third-line center. Because you don't have to...
Personally, I don't think he's I think he could be a second-line center on a lot of teams, unless you're a Pittsburgh or Toronto who have 2 first-line centers. There's not many teams that have 2 first-line centers.
No, I mean...
So I would view Danault as a second-line, 2-way center.
I guess it depends on what team.
Mainly because of how good he is defensively.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what team. Like, I mean, Columbus, I think it
Easily.
depends on what.
Easily,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it depends on what team.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Kotkaniemi. You don't have faith in him turning out.
I wouldn't say not that I don't have faith, but I'm just not as sold as maybe some Habs fans are.
Right, right. Now, I'll definitely disagree with you there. I don't know if I've made this comparison to you, but the way he plays, I think people had him confused when he was first drafted. He got the Barkov comparisons.
Yeah, it's
because he's
foolish.
from because he's from Finland.
Yeah.
He's a very physical center. He led the Habs in hits in the return to play in the playoffs, and he clearly has the offensive vision, especially with his playmaking, and he's got a very underrated shot. And he's so young. He was one of the youngest drafted players in his draft class, the youngest, if I'm not mistaken. And then what he did as the youngest player in the NHL for a couple years, extremely impressive. He took a step back with the injuries, had a rough year, but then in the return to play, he was incredible.
Yeah.
So I view him, it's going to take time, and the Habs admitted right away that when they drafted him, he was a project because, like, I compare him to a Ryan Getzlaf type future number one center or top six center. Plays physical. He has to fill out into his frame before he can really fully utilize his body to play the way he wants to play. And we saw some of that in the playoffs, how he wants to play. But then he has the low center of gravity with his gliding and skating. So I feel like it'll take a few years, and that's why I don't think we can trade away Danault right now or not.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
So I definitely see Kotkaniemi as around a third line center for at least a season. Maybe he'll spend some time in the top six with injuries, as he should. And then Suzuki, I think Suzuki's a little closer to having a more of an impact than Kotkaniemi, where
for sure
he doesn't have to fill out. He's already kind of at his size that he's.
But he just sees the ice so well.
Yeah, he's just so smart. Like, yeah, he's kind of. I definitely view him as almost a guarantee top six center, and when he's in his prime, he's going to be nasty. But in terms of this season, yeah, you're right. We could still struggle with depth down the middle because
that's what I think.
It's a full 82 game season that might wear on these guys.
And like you were saying, their age, it is very easy, especially at that age, to get discouraged in the National Hockey League. There's some center ice position, especially in our division alone. Right? It's a very, very, very deep.
Oh yeah.
So it's very easy to get discouraged. Like I said, you can't. Danault has to be a Hab just for the sake of sheltering those younger players until they're ready to be full-fledged all-stars.
Yeah. Now I get back going back to our top six. We have goal scorers on every single one of the wings. Even if you go down to like our weakest top nine forward right now is either Yoel Armia or Paul Byron, both of them who are capable of scoring 20 goals. After that, you got Tyler Toffoli, capable of scoring. He's consistent at 25. Who knows where he's entering his prime if he can get some more, bump that up, playing with a really good center, playmaking center, and KK or Suzuki. Gallagher, he's become a consistent 30-goal guy. Tatar, at least for this season, he's with us. Consistent 25-goal guy. So the list goes on and on with, Drouin has scored up to 20, and now that Drouin, I know you are not a big fan of Drouin, but
I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. I mean, we are from Halifax.
I won't take that away from you. But he definitely has not impressed his first few seasons in Montreal. He's had glimpses of it where he's looked really good, but there's some consistency issues. But I would argue to you, and I'll bring up a point about the Halifax Mooseheads actually, that since he's been in Montreal, the best center he has played with is Max Domi, who we've both just agreed is likely not a center. Now he has Suzuki, who he looked really good with in the return to play, and he actually led the team in points in the return to play with Suzuki. But the big thing is he'll be with Josh Anderson now, who's a 25 goal scorer as long as he gets healthy again. Maybe he's entering his prime. He could be more. Now, the point about the Mooseheads is when Drouin was playing at Halifax, he played with a very smart center who had a elite offense, Nate McKinnon. But he also played with a overage power forward in Stephen Fournier, who cleared the space for both McKinnon and Drouin. That's another piece Drouin hasn't had since he's been with the Habs, a power forward, which now he has. So I'm curious if Drouin can really show what he's made of. He's not a guy that's going to lift up a line and carry a line, but if he has those pieces with him, he could maybe explode and be the player he was meant to be.
Here's my thing. And I mean, you've probably heard me say it. I know your brother's heard me say it tons of times. I know a lot of people that watch hockey have heard me say it. I never thought from watching Jonathan Drouin with the Mooseheads, I mean, we went to a lot of games those 2 years. I didn't think Jonathan Drouin would be the player that a lot of people thought he was going to be. I don't think the way he plays the game necessarily translate to NHL. Hold on to the puck, making that extra move, dipsy doing all that stuff. That's my biggest thing. So when you say he hasn't played with NH like many top centers in the NHL, that's fair, of course. There's a lot of wingers that were drafted that high up there that don't have that sentiment when they first come to the league either, but still can produce and show you glimpses of things. I'm not saying Jonathan Drouin's not a good hockey player, by no means. I just don't know if Jonathan Drouin's that guy you can guarantee the pencil line for 25 goals or 20 goals. I don't know if it's a between the ears, if his hockey IQ isn't, the higher, so what it may be. Because the kid can fly. His shot is great. He has all the skills. So for not to translate on the ice right now in the NHL is kind of... But I wasn't sold on him in junior. Could it be the line
mates, right?
I don't know, because you can also make the argument, was it the line mates in junior that made him... Because the following year, he has Nick Ehlers on the team, Timo Meier's on the team.
Another power forward, though, right?
But where did they go?
Yeah.
They didn't win.
Yeah.
And he was their best player.
Yeah.
And they lost to semifinals, Valdor, I believe, Anthony Mantha. So I think he's probably ideally a second line winger. And some years maybe he gets the 25 goal mark when he gets a career year or something. But I just wouldn't pencil him as a bona fide number one on the top line.
Like a potentially elite level player.
Yeah.
Which is what we were kind of hoping we got.
Yeah, and that... I mean,
I can definitely see where you're coming from.
And I think that goes for a lot of Montreal's wingers. I think that's one thing that might, and once they address that, then I think they could be a real factor.
Yeah.
Is you say the wingers, listen, a lot of those wingers can score 20 goals. Would you be surprised if half of them didn't score 20 goals? You know what I mean? Like, would you be surprised if Josh Harrison comes back next year and only pops in maybe 17, 18 year off injury? I think Tatar's going to be good because he's playing for a contract. Would you be totally surprised if Drouin came back and struggled? Like, you know what I mean? Would those things totally surprise you? Like, to me, not necessarily. Like, Gallagher is Gallagher. You don't have to worry about Gallagher. Yeah. You don't have to worry about Deneau. Deneau's going to give you what he's going to give you. It's just a top two centerman, or no, I shouldn't say top two, but Kakinen and Suzuki. I don't think you can guarantee bank on how they perform in the playoffs. You know what I mean? I think the playoff whole thing is...
I think you can for extended periods of time in the season, and maybe the whole season, but definitely not like coming into the season expecting a full...
Well, and that's exactly, right?
Consistent...
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, they beat... I mean, hey, you can't take it away from the beat Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh did not outplay the hell out of Montreal. It wasn't like Carey Price stole that series.
No, he
like
didn't.
Future, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is... of course, the Habs fan, your expectations are high, but I just wouldn't totally be surprised if some guys did underachieve.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the only thing with the Habs. I just don't think they have that top 4, top 6 forward that... Like, Phil Kessel's a terrible example, because, I mean... But a guy like a Phil Kessel just score.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A guy like he doesn't have to, like Bozak and Van Reem, like back in the day, still pop 30-something goals.
Yeah.
Something like that. I know they're hard to get.
No, I totally agree with you there. That is one of the, like, the way I look at the Montreal's roster right now, we don't really have any glaring weaknesses anymore.
That's a good point.
However, there are some pieces where you'd want upgrades in those slots.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. My big thing with the Habs, though, is that depth. And I see what you're saying, where would you be surprised if some guys don't get to their previous marks? Honestly, there aren't many that I wouldn't be surprised, because there's consistency shown with these guys. We've already gone through the first line, Deneau, Tatar, and Gallagher. We know what we're going to get from them.
Yeah, those three, you know what you're going to get.
Now, with Josh Anderson, there's the injury concerns. Yeah. So that is a concern. But if it doesn't happen to be a concern, which they're saying it isn't, and they would say that, but he has shown consistency as a 25 goal scorer.
Now, I will say this.
17 in his first season.
The 17.
On pace for 25
Josh
in his second.
Anderson historically is not a goal scorer. Like, even in junior, I think the highest mark hit in junior was 27, which, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of goals. But you know what I mean?
But he is one in the NHL. And he hasn't played significantly crazy good players.
I think it was Boone Jenner and Dubinsky.
Yeah.
The majority.
Yeah, and he's still potting that number of goals. The big thing is his speed, and he does have a really good shot.
Yeah.
But, 17 in his first season, 19 in his second, but it was in a lot less games. He was on pace for 25. Then he had the 27-goal season.
Yeah.
So there's improvement each year, not just consistency. So that's just one example where there's consistency. Then you look at Tyler Toffoli. Throughout his entire NHL career, outside of like one season with LA, he's been around that 20 to 25 mark.
I will say this, though. That one season without them, last year goes and plays with Horvat, and then previously was part of, what was it, the 80s line they called in LA? Pearson, Toffoli, and Jeff Carter?
Yeah.
So he's not going to get offensively what those two do when he gets to Montreal right away as his centerman. So that's another thing where could...
Depends on who he would be paired with, right?
I mean, if you pair with all three...
And how those centers play throughout the season.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm... Yeah, so I don't think me and you here sitting here thinking Suzuki and Kotkaniemi are going to, go out there next year. And what would you cap there? What would you have?
Suzuki, I feel like Suzuki is definitely going to have the more points
I would
the
agree
whole
with that
season.
100%.
I think I don't want to overhype him too much and expect way too much out of him.
Don't jinx it.
So definitely 50-60 I think is fair. Maybe I'd go 60 as an optimist.
So that's my point. If you have 60 as his highest,
how many goals is Toffoli getting?
You know what I mean? Just something like that.
Okay.
But like I said, I'm not too. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
right. So now we'll move down to the. Let's just talk about the Montreal Canadiens decor. I love this decor. I think the one, there's no weaknesses. However, you could say you want a little more offense from your left side. That's one thing you can say about them. They don't have a quarterback, a power play quarterback as a defenseman who's a left-hander. That was kind of that would have been a nice piece. We might have some of those pieces coming up in terms of prospects that might grow into that kind of position. However, the way that it's lined up right now, all of our defensemen are NHL defensemen. You could argue we might have more than top four defensemen
tough to play
in our decor. And they're all huge. They all lay the body. But if we go down pair for pair, I'm just going to assume Weber and Sherrod are paired up again. Incredibly heavy pair. We know what we're going to get out of Shea Weber. I mean, at some point he's going to decline, but he hasn't yet, so why would I expect it? So we're going to get the goals from him. You're going to get some of the best shutdown hockey in the league from Shea Weber. And then Sherrod, very, very respectable defensively as well. He's got a shot on him. His best offensive season, if I'm not mistaken, was with the Habs last year. Another guy, he's 29 years old, so in his prime as a defenseman. Down to the second pair, Jeff Petry, insanely underrated defenseman in the NHL. And he just keeps getting better and better too. He put up, Jeff Petry put up 40 points last year. And was a career high for him in just
71 games.
In just 71 games. Plus, he lays the body. Plus, he's great defensively. He does make the odd mistake in his own zone when he has to carry the puck. But when you're a guy like him who carries the puck as much as he does, you're going to have the odd giveaway.
Yeah.
But otherwise, great defensively. Incredible skater. And then to his left, maybe Joel Edmondson or maybe Brett Kulak sticks with him. Because him and Brett Kulak have so much chemistry. They looked really good together in the playoffs. But maybe it's Joel Edmondson. And we already briefly talked about him. Great shutdown defenseman. He's at least a 5, maybe a 4.
Yeah.
But, ideally probably a 5 on a cup team.
Yeah, definitely.
Then we have the potential of Romanov coming in for us. And he might not be comfortable right away in North America, but he's a very highly touted prospect. And then there's Victor Mete, who's very good defensively, a very good puck mover, just can't get the offensive game going. So I definitely wouldn't call him a top 4. He'd be more of like a number 6 at this point in his career. But defensively, he's responsible. And I don't think I'm forgetting anyone. What are your thoughts on the Habs decor?
I honestly truly believe if Montreal makes the playoffs this year, it has to be because of the defense.
Right.
Just strictly because before... It's funny because we think of Montreal last year almost as 2 different teams. The teams before COVID and then the team during... You know what I mean? Their defense was brutal at times. Like the just brutal. Yeah. Just brutal. So at the end of the day, you have a lot of young forwards that are going to still make mistakes. So you have Carey Price. We know what Carey Price is going to do. So if this decor can hold its own, now speed, I don't know if that's going to be a question
For the Habs?
for the
At the
defense
decor?
core at the decor, and I don't know if that's going to be an issue.
That's why I don't think we should be getting rid of Victor Mete. Jeff Petry is our fastest skater. He's like literally outside of Mete is the only puck moving defenseman we have.
The problem with Mete
so you
is
have to have Mete
comes
there.
because Victor Mete can go to contract and argue the case that, hey, like, look what I've played for you guys. Like, I'm a top 4 guy, and like I deserve that money. Where Bergman and fans like, well, are you really a top 4 on our team? I think he's the perfect trade candidate at some point this year. So, but Romanov's going to be a huge because I mean if he can skate and he can run a power play. We've seen that in the World Juniors that translates to the NHL and he can hit. He's a first record they're calling him in the World Juniors, but they're calling him something. Yeah. Just like the way he plays, it's hilarious. It's fun. Yeah. So I think their defense is going to dictate if they make the playoffs this year.
Right.
Because I think they will definitely be in the hunt for the whole year. I can't envision them having 2 10-game losing streaks again this year.
No, not a chance.
So those are going to be the guys, and if they can chip in a little bit offensively to help the Montreal forwards, that's a huge bonus. But I think as a Habs fan, for Habs fans, I think that would be the thing that I'm going to be focused on most this year. Because if they can give you good defense and be a solid defensive hockey team, they will score enough goals too.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of keeping the puck out.
We should actually be able to not be losing so many 1-goal games.
Not hemmed in your own zone, getting up 40-something shots. Yeah, exactly.
And, the effect that D could have on Carey Price. Carey Price, I still believe he is one of, if not the best goalie in the league. Best goalie in the world. The only goalie right now who has an argument against him is Andrei Vasilevsky. But fair. Overall, every facet of goaltending, even the ones that some goalies have, don't even utilize, he is good at. Like every absolute, there's no other way he could be better in that position. No. If you think about the puck control behind the net, his unbelievably accurate passes, the rebound control where he's deflecting pucks into the corners.
He commands everything.
Yeah, and smothering pucks, and then the saves, and he makes them all look easy. He's always in position. And then when he has to make a desperation save, he does. And the desperation saves he makes are insane.
He's in players' heads.
Yeah.
I will make the bet if you had someone come down 10 times and they would score 2 on Carey Price, they say they do or 2 on or 4 on someone, if they're the same shots as Carey Price, they miss. Just because it's Carey Price nets.
Yeah.
He just has that mind.
And his stats have taken a dip because of how bad the Habs decor has been, especially on that left side. And the bottom pair for some stretches too. And then with Weber out for the year and a half that he was out. So people, have looked at Carey Price's numbers and gone, oh, he's, declining or whatever. But especially this year, I think he really proved throughout the season. Outside of like November, he's kind of struggled. Yeah. But throughout the season, and then especially in the return to play, I think he just proved again to everyone that he's still the best goalie, at least one of the best goalies in the league.
Playoff goalie for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For sure.
and then Allen behind him, so the defense could really help him out too.
Yeah, I like what you said.
Defensively, St. Louis had a great defense too, and I really do look at the Montreal Canadiens defense right now as really strong, especially in terms of especially in terms of defending. So my outlook for the Montreal Canadiens, I am very excited heading into this season. I think Bergevin did a fantastic job filling holes in the roster. He's continued to manage his assets very well. Like we went into this draft with 14 picks. We're going into the next one with 13, so we have trade chips throughout the season. Tons of prospects who could come up and fill roles if there's injuries. Lots of depth in the top 9. Defense looks good. I'm insanely excited for this Habs team, and I think a big reason why I feel they're really going to take a jump in the standings is Jake Allen having that
I agree 100%.
Massive difference in the points in the standings because of how weak our backup position was. Plus, you get Price rested as well, so you might get a better price. I'm thinking
life longer.
Yeah, exactly. And we're 2 years removed from just barely missing the playoffs with 96 points. And the team really hasn't changed a whole lot since then, other in terms of losing offense or losing defense. They've only gotten better outside of the Domi swap. That's one player who's now not with us, but we've added so much and gotten so much deeper. So, like, even last year, I thought a lot of their issues came from some weakness on the decor. We did deal with some significant injuries again. Honestly, I could no doubt in my mind see the Montreal Canadiens finishing top 3 in the Atlantic Division, and if they happen to take second,
who goes out of the top third then?
Okay,
tell me who goes out of the 3.
Out of the 3,
is it Tampa, Boston, or Toronto?
So, okay, so
because I could see this, I could agree.
Yeah,
with you.
Okay, so I believe that Montreal and Boston are evenly matched, or I might even give Montreal the edge. Like you, I'm not that confident in where the Bruins are heading.
The depth.
Their core is aging. Even Marchand, like Bergeron is up there, okay? Marchand himself, I think he's 32 now. They still got great years ahead of them, okay? But they're approaching that part of their career where, you might not get 100 points out of Brad Marchand,
No, I agree with you 100%.
Of course you have David Pasternak there.
Krejci's a Band-Aid.
Rask is up and down there. It's a good thing they kept Halak for another season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
That's something that's really carrying the Bruins right now.
Yeah.
Is the best goaltending tandem in the league. But they lost Torrey Krug, and they still haven't signed Chara. And as old as Chara is, he's still very strong defensively.
That's baffling to me, man. That's your captain. You're telling me he won't take a little less to play there for 1 year?
He already has one, so he'll do it again.
Wow.
He'll do it again. So that could be a big loss for them if they don't happen to re-sign him. Maybe they do, but even still, I feel like the Habs are either evenly matched or even have the edge against the Boston Bruins. So I could see them taking a step back. Mm-hmm. Now, personally, I think our roster right now, you guys might have the better elite talent. I personally think our team is better suited to win. I mean, we were 5-0 against you guys in the last 5 regular season games we've played. We've only gotten better. You guys have either kind of treaded water or maybe taken a step back, to be honest. So I would not be surprised to see Montreal finish ahead of the Leafs in the standings. I would definitely give the number 1 spot to Tampa Bay. Their roster might get altered here over the next few years, or over the course of the off season, but they're still going to be nasty. Now, I really think a battle for second and third, because of how good of a regular season team Toronto is, could be Montreal and Toronto, and maybe we finally get that playoff series between these two teams.
That'd be something.
Okay, yeah, and who else is in the division that's going to come up and take the top 3 spots? Detroit's not.
Only thing I can think
Ottawa,
of.
I don't think.
Only thing I can think of
Florida.
is Bob goes off. If Bob goes off,
yeah.
Joel Quenneville, second year now. If they all buy into his system, that's the wild card I think in Florida. Florida. If Bob can go off, those forward group can stay healthy, because Huberdeau and Babcock are hard to stay healthy together.
Mind you, they lost Dadonov, Hoffman, and Trocheck.
Yeah. You know what, though? I think that's a case there, because you see goal scorers, maybe less is more. Maybe, okay, we can lose some goal scorers, but we can bring in better two-way players. They're not going to put up the points those guys do, but they're going to be better two-way players. And that's what Toronto needs. That's what Florida's almost built just like Toronto, to be honest with you. Minus their talent just isn't as good as Toronto.
Right.
But Florida could be a wild card.
Right. So I give Tampa first, and I could see Montreal finishing second, and then Boston and Toronto battling it out for that third spot. That's how I see it.
Okay. Well, I disagree. I got it. Tampa, man. I don't know. I think Tampa's a hell of a team. I think they're still the best team in the division. Standing-wise, I could see them come out very slow. That's the only thing that could... But I would personally have Montreal as maybe battling Boston, but I just think Boston just has that will that they're just not going to be... They're just winners. You know what I mean? And until they have that year where it's a shitty year, I can't say, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year.
Yeah, I
think
know,
what hurts Boston is the rest in the lineup. For them not to get someone on that second line, to me, is baffling. I mean, if they had a second line, they probably would have won the cup. Yeah. They would have won the cup against St. Louis.
And I mean, Torrey Krug going out, that's an insane amount of offense from their back end, and he plays big for even though his size.
And when he lost him, that's where I thought Pietrangelo might have went.
Yes, I was really worried about that. I was sitting around hoping. I was like, please don't go to Boston. It'd be a typical Boston thing.
I was too.
Thinking to myself, that would be total Boston luck. Chara retires, and they immediately get a number 1 defenseman back without even having to wait.
I forget who said that. It was Bobby Orr to Brad Park to Ray Bourque to essentially Zdeno Chara.
Yeah.
To what could have been potentially Petro.
I know. I was worried about that. So today, when they announced the Pietrangelo deal, I was like, yes.
Stay out there.
He is not coming to Boston.
No, that was my concern when Krug walked. And when the Ekman-Larsson deal didn't get done, I was like, well, Jesus, they have to do something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Boston, I'm telling you, that's...
Yeah. So, basically, the way I'm kind of feeling this out here is you and I each think the Habs are going to finish second in the division.
No,
you and I both think...
No.
So, I think the Habs are going to finish second. You think the Leafs are going to finish second.
Yeah, we both have Boston
we both think Boston's
dropping. I don't know if it's out of the division, if it's to a wild card. Boston certainly, I do not think will be the best team in the NHL like they were last year.
No.
I don't think they'll be the best team in the division.
Right.
But I think they're definitely still a playoff team just because of that top line.
Gotcha. Well, I think that just about covers everything. Was it fun? We'll have to agree to disagree. And I'm hoping we go 4-0 against you this year again.
You got to remember, though, you say that, and, like, you didn't put in that fact that Freddie didn't start 8 of those games. You didn't put in the disclaimer. You didn't put in the disclaimer. Are you sure? Not one? I'm pretty sure, yeah. If it was Hutch, and then, if I remember correctly, you guys went overtime against Jack Campbell. 1-1 game, and I think Montreal scored the overtime winner.
No, you're definitely right. I don't think we faced Anderson once.
No.
But we still won them.
Yeah, we finished high in the standings, but and then we lost in the first round. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it because I'm looking forward. Hopefully, we can get fans in the buildings this year.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to.
Where we can agree is we need this rivalry back. A legitimate rivalry.
And I think the media would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of NHL would agree with that.
Yeah. Enough of this, like, you guys are good, and then when you're not good, we're good. And back and forth. It's like we've traded for all those years that the Montreal Canadiens were winning divisions with Pacioretty and Subban and Desharnais, and, like, you guys sucked.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we moved away from that,
you guys go downhill.
Yeah, we go downhill. You guys rise up. We need to match up at the same time. I've been hoping for years we finish second and third and face in the playoffs, because
I think it'd be great
as soon as you do that, massive
just add
rivalry.
gas in the rivalry too.
You can see how much these guys hate each other even in the regular season.
It just sucks that rivalry's gotten to the point where it's just strictly just about the fans.
Yeah.
Like, as a kid growing up, it was Toronto Ottawa in the playoffs. For you, your life, Montreal Boston
the whole time.
Yeah. We've been robbed.
Yeah.
Because, I know a lot of, come on, not getting one Leafs Habs matchup.
I know, our whole lifetime.
And, not even to really play a super meaningful game either.
Yeah.
For both sides, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I played a meaningful game. It's like, we have to win this game.
Yeah.
Not because it's Montreal, just because, I don't know. I agree with you. I think it would be awesome.
It almost came, wasn't it 2 seasons ago, it almost came down to last game of the season, Habs win, they're in. But then we ended up losing a game, mathematically eliminating ourselves, and playing you guys in the last game of the season, and we beat you. Ryan Poehling scored 4 goals, and it meant nothing.
Oh, that's right.
It was almost when you're in.
Tried to updo Matthews.
Yeah, it was almost when you're in that year. So let's say they do finish second and third in the division. We can argue over who is in second or third, but let's say they face in the playoffs, and we have the Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs in a Game 7 series. Who do you have?
Oh, I obviously have the Maple Leafs. I would say Leafs in 6.
Okay, yeah.
I think the home ice, I think, would be a factor in maybe how many games, just because each team will build and all that stuff. But I think the difference would not be in that series would be the Leafs down the middle. Like we were talking about earlier, like Montreal is still very, very young at center. Very young at center. I understand they beat Pittsburgh, but I think you can make the argument now maybe Matthews and Tavares might be a little higher up on the pedestal than maybe the Malkin Crosby deal, especially in the last 2 years.
Right.
And another thing is, like I said, the Maple Leafs defense. If their defense has improved, the Leafs defense last couple of years has been pretty bad, and the Leafs have taken Boston to 7 games twice, who have been Stanley Cup contenders. Last year, they lose to Columbus. Unbelievable goaltending performance. Obviously, Montreal can do the same thing, though, with Price. So, but I do like the Leafs. Like I said, down the middle, I think the top 6 is a lot better than Montreal's. A lot better. You go through the numbers. Their top 6 last year, adding Mikheyev into the top 6, 326 points. Okay. And that's with Hyman missing 19 games, Marner missing 11 games, Mikheyev missing 31 games. The top 6 is lethal. The bottom 6 hopefully can do their job, and the defense can do their job, and Freddie can hold up his end of the bargain, at least in 6.
Right on. Well, I'm going to disagree. Obviously, Habs fan here. I'm going to go with Montreal. And the big thing for me is how I think the Habs could beat the Leafs in a 7-game series. One, you have the Carey Price factor. We don't have to talk about that too much. he can steal games. I think just having him in net for everything that he brings, we're a hard out. But now with the improved roster, the depth on both wings, left and right, and then the improved center depth. I understand we're inexperienced, but the big thing for me with the Habs is that the top nine's so deep, and then down the middle, it's how well these guys play defensively. I think between Danault and Suzuki, they may be able to shut down the two star-studded lines of the Leafs that Tavares is anchoring in the middle, and then Matthews. So with that, though, the offense from our top two lines might be a wash, but then we still have the depth in the third line, whoever that might be. Let's say Kotkaniemi and Toffoli and Armia or whatnot. And I think that absolutely blows the Leafs' third line out of the water, and then the fourth line as well. I'm not sure how the Leafs could handle going up against the Habs, where we'd be rolling all four lines. And then I think our defense is immensely better. Maybe not offensively in terms of playmaking and puck movement up the ice. Obviously, we do have Jeff Petry, so maybe you match him and Riley there. Riley getting the edge in terms of the dynamic skill, but Petry, the all-around defenseman who's also very strong at carrying the puck. But just the depth and how well they play defensively, I think it'll help out Carey Price, and I could see the Toronto Maple Leafs forwards being very frustrated. So I could definitely see the Habs beating out the Leafs. Not sure how many games it would take. I think that's kind of up in the air. I'll just say 7, because I still think it'd be a tight fought series. Anderson has, he makes some mistakes in the playoffs for the Leafs, but he's always been a great goalie for them. And I know you mentioned earlier that we never faced him last season in the regular season, where we went 4-0. So we can't really gauge those games, especially with all the roster changes as well, how this potential or hypothetical playoff series would work out. But yeah, the big thing for me is the defensive ability from the Habs top 9, not just the depth and scoring, but their ability to play two-way hockey and play physical and forecheck. I could see that being very difficult for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, and I think another thing with the Leafs is Matthews, I don't think gets enough credit for his two-way game.
Right.
I think a lot of people look at Austin Matthews and see, okay, goal scorer, and that's. But when you watch the games, and Leaf fans know the guy's two-way game is very plus 19 last year.
Right.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people would have expected that. So yeah, like I said, the Leafs. I think the Leafs center ice position. I mean, I think Matthews and Tavares are so much better than Kotkaniemi and Suzuki at this point that it doesn't. I don't think Danault maybe knocking off Kerfoot or whatever. Maybe I don't think that's strong enough. I think down the ice, the Leafs win this series.
And I would definitely say that Danault would be matched up against either one of Tavares or Matthews, or he might be double shifting and heavily relied upon.
Well, Suzuki was healthy, yeah.
And then Suzuki would, fill in for the rest of that defensive.
I just think it's a totally different beast, because Pittsburgh last year, after Malkin and Crosby, it's like their wingers were kind of not like what they used to be.
Right.
Not what they used to be at all. So yeah, I think that's the difference. At least top 6, I think would probably get the job against the Habs. You like the Habs. Hopefully it happens.
Hopefully it does happen, because we need it. We need it desperately as Habs and Leafs fans. Well, sure, all you guys would love it.
Imagine the ranks too. Like, you go to Montreal, there'd be a shit ton of Leaf fans.
Yeah.
Games in Toronto, there'd be a shit ton of Montreal fans. Like, it would be electric. Like, no travel, essentially. Yeah. It would be
I'd have to think about going up. I'd have to think, because that'd be a historic series. Drive up to one of the spots and catch a game. Or,
I know.
Especially if it's in a later round, right?
Oh, if it was I guess that would be. Then we don't want them playing first round.
Yeah.
Hopefully Montreal gets a wild card or something.
Yeah.
And then wins knocks upset. Who knows? It has to happen though. It has to happen.
Yeah.
Very soon too.
Yeah. Now overall, why don't we just add this in as a little bonus here? Overall, how do you feel about Kyle Dubas as a general manager?
Well, I think the one thing with Dubas is Dubas had to deal with a lot of Lou's problems, that like Lou signing Marleau to the extra year. Dubas did have to move a first-round pick for that. He gets a higher first-round pick in return for the Kapanen trade. So, I mean, that kind of offsets. And, I mean, a lot of people you see talking like, oh, a team that hasn't won already trading off assets. It's like, well, you're not trading off these guys for nothing, essentially. I mean, you're making room for a team. So, essentially, you trade Kapanen and you get a first-round pick and you clear up cap space for TJ Brodie. Right? So, it's not that I don't understand a lot of those comments. Another thing with Dubas, too, is maybe doesn't get a lot of credit for, it's shown he's trying to adapt. Like, he's trying to adapt. Last year, he had the backup goalie in Kyle Clifford when the team needed it. The issue he's out at Wayne Simmons. He keeps trying his damnedest tied to the defense.
Right.
Like, it's not like he's sitting idle by and just hoping something happens. Tyson Barrie obviously didn't work out. CC was a disaster. He was like almost not even a top 6 defenseman. So he's trying and he's adapting. And like I said, it's a little too early to see what if this year they underachieve and whatnot. We'll see what happens. But I'm not.
So if the Leafs happen to miss the playoffs this year, or not win a playoff round,
well, yeah, because he has what now? If that would be 3 off seasons,
yeah,
right. So yeah, I mean, but you can't after 2 off seasons and all that. And I understand people complaining about how he negotiated the contracts. I agree. The Marner one's the one that bothers me the most. The Nylander one, I don't really think Nylander got the better of Dubas. I mean, Nylander last year scores 31 goals. I know he's done it once, but that was the most recent year. He's still very young.
Right.
If Nylander does go on to be a 27, 30 goal scorer and get 60, 70 points,
then it would be a fair
contract. Yeah, you know what I mean?
And I know I brought that up earlier about how, Nylander and his agent got the best of Dubas. The big thing for me is that it seemed like there was a stalemate, and the Habs, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Leafs management mentioned that they were okay going into the season without him. And then, it was a couple days before the season started.
Well, no, that was Marner. Marner signed when they were in Newfoundland for camp. Nylander signed. I want to say the season had already started.
So
the season had already started. I don't think it got to December anywhere close to that. But I want to say it was because his first goal. I want to say it was against Carolina, during that kids game or something.
Right.
But I'm almost certain that it was during the season he ended up coming back and signed. Right. Because he was in Sweden, or Austria, one of those countries over there. I don't know if it was actually Sweden. He was practicing with another team during, and he flew right over.
Yeah.
And but Marner, he signed during training camp.
For me, Dubas is an interesting case where, I don't know if I've ever seen a general manager take over a team with as much elite talent as Dubas was gifted when he took over.
Yeah.
Now, in his defense, and I know you've told me this, he was part of the Leafs management that brought in these guys and did the scouting, and he ran the AHL team in the Marlies for a long time. So it's not like he came out of nowhere and was gifted this, potentially elite team. But he did get a lot when he came in.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know who more so pushed for Tavares, was Shanahan or Dubas himself, but that whole situation kind of worked against him. And an inexperienced GM making that big signing and then having to negotiate some very important contracts. You wonder if maybe sticking with Lou Lamoriello for one extra year might have really helped Dubas slide into the GM position.
Yeah, you say that, and then you see what Lou's done in the island. I mean, they're to the point now where they literally have to clear a cap to sign their best player in Brazil. Right. I mean, the contract they gave Komarov. I mean, the contract. I think we're talking about Josh Bailey was a long-term contract. Those guys are good players, don't get me wrong, but those contracts are hard to move. So I'm not big on the whole should have kept Lou thing. I mean, it was Dubas' first crack in NHL. Any team that like Bergman, he got Carey Price.
Right.
You know what I mean? He inherited Carey Price. And he's still, going to his 9th year trying to get to a cup finals. You know what I mean? So, of course, he inherited. The defense is the one that if this left-wing guy can pan out and the Brody trade or the Brody deal works out, I think the Leafs are okay. And another with the Leafs too, it's not like the day when San Jose, back when they were always number 1 seed, losing to an 8 seed or losing to a 7 seed.
Right.
The Leafs have been, minus the Columbus series, have been the underdog going to the series against the Bruins. Bruins in 7 both times. So it's it's kind of, I don't know how much stock you put into that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So.
Well, you mentioned Bergevin, so why don't we move into Bergevin? I'll give you my take on him. I know the results haven't been there in the last 3 to 4 years, but from Bergevin's mouth himself, the team was going through a reset. Now, you brought up that he inherited Carey Price, and yes, he did. He inherited one of the best goalies in the world. He inherited Max Pacioretty, who at the time, or not at the time, but would become one of the best goal scorers in the league for an extended period of time. And he got PK Subban. Those are the 3 main pieces he has. But the one thing that I will say about what Bergevin inherited was a lot of guys well past their prime, into their 30s, with plenty of term left on their contracts, which he had to figure out early on. He was kind of put into a position when he took over that they had to compete because of the way the cap structure was set up when he took over. They had Eric Cole with term left, Giunta with term left, Gomez as well. Markov was getting up there in age, and then Plekanec as well was towards the end of his prime. So he came in, and they had the third overall pick in Galchenyuk that they brought in. But then, after that, it was slim pickings for Bergevin, especially in the prospect pool. They had zero high-level prospects. And since then, from the prospects that they had when he took over, the only one to pan out was Brendan Gallagher, who was an unknown fifth-round pick at the time. So he really didn't have much to work with, but managed to kind of make that roster compete. He filled some holes with Jeff Petry. He had the Vanek deal come in as a rental. So I like kind of what he did initially, and we got to the Eastern Conference Final. Price took an injury from Kreider and went out. And then since then, he's been retooling, and I've loved his philosophy. I think over time, he's become, I personally think, and the results aren't there, one of the best general managers in the NHL. All around, especially considering the market that he's in, the media pressure that he has to deal with, the fan pressure, plus just his asset management in general. He always comes out net positive in trades and in transactions. He doesn't often ever lose unrestricted free agents for nothing. The ones that he did were Radulov, who was brought in the year prior, which was a great signing. And then Markov, who was 38 years old. And I personally was kind of frustrated with how that Markov situation went down. It led to the mistake with Karl Alzner, signing him long-term. But overall, I love what he does, and he does his players favors he's got the respect of the league, he's got the respect of his peer general managers, and he does his players favors on the regular. You look at what he did to Andrew Shaw. There might have been a trade request there, maybe not. He shipped him exactly where he wanted to go, to Chicago. And there's plenty of more stories like that, like recently buying out Alzner, really doing his best to try and trade Charles Hudon. And now with this offseason, how he's locked up the Habs' entire core for the next few years and filled every need that they needed in this offseason. I absolutely love what he does as a general manager. And
My problem with Bergman is the drafting. People will say, okay, well, we can say, okay, Cole Caulfield, Romanov. We don't know what they are yet.
Right.
The track record has been absolutely brutal. Just brutal. Last year, if you go down the roster and have it right in front of me, they may have had 5-6 guys they actually drafted on that team. So my thing, and like Nick Suzuki, good identified young talent, brought him in, but wasn't their draft pick. Say what you want about Kotkaniemi. Habs fans are hoping he pans out to be a good player. Tkachuk was sitting right there. They passed on him. We'll see what goes on down the road. But right now, Tkachuk is clearly the better player. Quinn Hughes, maybe. That's whatever. We'll find out when that goes on the road. But I just look back at guys like McCarron, Tenorti, just players like that, like the Galchenyuk one.
Yeah.
So it's just tough when you go that long and strike out on first-round picks. I understand they weren't top picks. But at some point, some of your later first-round picks, second-round picks, third-round picks, they do have to hit. Because, the draft record is kind of... And that's maybe why Montreal got into the position where they got from the very beginning. Because if, they draft correctly, the Galchenyuk draft, if they draft correctly, and then you trade Sergachev for Drouin. I'm sure Habs fans still hoping that pans out. But I just feel like it's the draft that has really put Montreal behind the eight ball.
Yeah, I can't disagree with a whole lot of that, especially for the first 4 to 5 years of his tenure. A lot of the picks didn't turn out, and you kind of briefly mentioned it. They were late picks, and that's kind of all I have in rebuttal to that, was that we were winning the division year after year when he first took over. So all of our picks were late. How much can you really expect out of those late picks? But I totally get that for the first 4 years or so. But since then, all the scouts and the experts around the league are saying we have one of the best prospect pools out there. In the top 5 is pretty much the consensus. And there's a ton of good-looking prospects that we have that will hopefully pan out. But you are right. You have to wait and see how it goes before you give full credit for that. Because there hasn't been success in the past with the drafting for the Habs. So there has to be.
Well, exactly.
Especially where in the first bit, they were late picks. A lot of these more recent ones in the last few years have been mid to early round. Mm-hmm. So you got to really hope that they turn out, and Bergevin and Timmins have done it.
And I'm not going to sit here as a Leafs fan and pat Kyle Dubas on the back until I see what Nick Robertson and Rasmus Sandin as later first-round picks turn out to be. Right? So I think but as of right now, those two look like they're going to be solid NHL players. So, that just shows later rounds you can get players. And that's two
and the
two
Leafs
drafts.
Got to give credit where it's due. The Leafs have done a good job.
And I think that's another thing Kyle Dubas doesn't get enough credit for. Is Dubas literally came up from, he GM'd the Marlies, he knew all those young players, he was part of the scouting. So I don't think Dubas gets enough credit in that aspect of it too, right? So we'll see what happens this year. I think this is a really big make or break year for probably both GMs, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's fair to say if Montreal goes under and underachieves again, you got to start looking at the age of Weber, the age of Price, and if they're going to still be in their top level when Kotkaniemi and Suzuki, if they're ready to be legitimate number one and number two center, if that timeline's going to match up.
Yeah.
So,
he's definitely gone all in this offseason in terms of how the team is going to look like moving forward. So the product on the ice is definitely going to have to match up with that because you're now locked in to all these players for a significant amount of time. All of them are valuable and very movable because not many have the no trade clauses and whatnot, but these are the players that he's identified as wanting to be part of the team and the core going forward.
And I think he will.
So it has to work.
Have to at some point make a trade for a legitimate, just a pure goal scorer.
Right.
Like I mean,
we do have Caulfield coming up, so I would.
That's not going to align potentially with Weber and Price either, because that's what you're aiming for. I think me and you talked about it the other day. It's probably next 4 years for Montreal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Would you agree with that? 4 or 5 years?
Well, yeah, I definitely see a window here, and I don't believe in windows. I don't think Bergevin believes in windows, but I do see a set period of time here in the next 3 to 4 years where the team is going to be expected to compete and go on long runs.
The odds will be better.
I don't think this window is going to close as soon as that 4 years end or as whenever Price and Weber are ready to go, because I think they're already kind of planning that ahead of time. That's the other thing I like about Bergevin. He's got a really good outlook into the the short term and the long term. I think he's already planned for Price's departure with Caden Primo. He made a draft, Frederick Dichow, an unknown guy in the 7th round who's looking really good in Europe right now. So he's already kind of planning to solidify that goaltending position. And then with Weber, he's drafted heavy on defensemen. So and you kind of have to. I like that strategy. I think Nashville did it for a while. Draft heavy on defensemen eventually.
Nashville hit home run with them.
Yeah, you can use them yourself or you can use them as trade
pieces. That's right.
Anyway, we got to get this rivalry back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been great doing this with you. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and we'll have Tyler back in at some point, and hopefully we can get some other rival fans in here. Of the other teams in the Atlantic Division as well.
People are going to be dying for hockey come January. Dying for hockey.
Big time. Cheers, guys. If you like these videos from the Scotian Canadian channel, hit the subscribe button, the like button, and of course the bell for notifications. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Scotian Canadian. Cheers, guys.